Many people ask this question, how can I come out of the negative thoughts? You know, even though I have read so many positive mental attitude books and I have attended so many training programs, some or other, this kind of negative thoughts always come to me quite often, again and again. So is there a way to come out of this kind of negative thoughts? When someone says about negative thoughts, I think what he's talking about is not just negative thoughts per se. It's about the fear, it's about the anxiety. Fear, when you start thinking about doing something, you start getting some kind of a fear saying that if I fail, if you are actually going to meet a person and you're very anxious, you have that anxiety built up in you, how this meeting will be. So these are all negative elements, negative emotions which actually comes into your mind quite often. How we can get out of it? This is something which a lot of people ask. You should know one thing, we can do a lot of peripheral things, like listening to some audio programs and reading some positive mental attitude books, and these are all very conscious level efforts. But this fear or the anxiety, they are all working on an unconscious level and a non-conscious level. It just comes without our consciousness. We don't want them to come, but still they are coming. So it's without our purpose, without our focus, without our conscious effort, it's coming. So that means these are all non-conscious activities. So how do we actually control or manage them? You should know one thing. When we talk about neurobiology, we should know one thing, that our brain has been formed over a period of time. That means through an evolution. So if you look at our primitives, I'm talking about millions of years back, our primitives, during that time, they used to be in the forest, maybe millions of years back. I'm talking about that scenario. They used to stay in gangs because they wanted protection, and during that time your brain had only one function or one or two functions: food, sex, security, nothing else. Your brain was not thinking about the mathematics or the kinds of accounting, or your brain was not inventing new things. Your brain was not visualizing about the kind of business you're going to do. Nothing. The brain, actually the main purpose was to protect, to have security. And while you were in an insecure environment, all the time you were anxious. Your brain was anxious. Your brain was having fear. When is that attack going to happen? When a wild animal is going to attack you? So all the time the brain was tuned with fear and anxiety to protect yourself. And you should understand one thing, that we all carry genes which is being carried from about 8,000 generations. So our original core part of our brain carries the same thing. It carries that fear, it carries the anxiety. For the brain, these are some of the natural programming which has already been built in. Whatever you do on a peripheral level may not have lasting impact because it is so deep rooted. So how do we manage that? How do we manage the situation? That's where thought process re-engineering helps. Because in thought process re-engineering, we work on the non-conscious part of the brain. And actually we have developed some mechanisms, some processes, some methodologies by which actually you can manage the non-conscious part of the brain. Through practice, in fact, definitely. Now with that, what happens? With that, what happens is you can actually use your brain in a proper way. I always believe that if you don't use your brain in a proper way, your brain will use you in an improper way. Because the brain carries a lot of stuff which you may not even require. But if you allow the brain to control you, the brain will control you definitely with all the kinds of stuff which is already being built into the brain. Whereby fear, anxiety, all the kinds of negative things which have happened in your life, everything is being built in. Like any other organ, I strongly believe that you use your hand. It is not your hand is using you. At a situation when you wanted to give a beating to somebody at that point of time, you are actually controlling your hand. It's not the hand is controlling you. We control every organ. All of our organs are being controlled by us. You control each of your organ. But are you controlling your brain? Brain is only an organ. And most cases I have seen that people, get controlled by the brain. That's the challenge. The moment you are under the control of the brain will run its own programming. Thought process reengineering actually works at that level, whereby it changes the programming of the brain, the non-conscious part of the brain. And of course you can take control of the brain and you can manage the brain, because that is the most powerful thing in the universe. There is nothing else in this universe which is more powerful than your brain. Take charge of your brain right now.